Welcome, everyone, to the Pass Control Podcast, a show where a couple of best friends talk about the latest in video games and nerd culture. Sometimes we have guests, sometimes we talk about Kirby too much. Either way, we have a new episode for you each and every week. But if you're watching this right now, you'll notice that no one else from Pass the Controller is here because we are having a special bonus episode with a wonderful cast of folks from around North America. I didn't know what to say because of Canada, but here we are. We got it. We got there.
Got it. You did it.
We are going to be talking about Kirby, the pink puffball that we all love, since it is the 30th anniversary of that delightful little platformer and minigame and other spin-offs. We'll get there. And we're going to try to do what Kirby does and inhale all of this content in an hour. So we'll see if we can actually pull that off. But without further ado, as always, I'm your host, Brenden Groom. But joining me on this lovely... Is today Wednesday? I don't even know what day it is. This Wednesday evening, joining us for the first time. You may know him from his shows The Left Behind Game Club and Cutscenes, among other things. The wonderful, the Canadian. He actually like the Canadian. There's no other Canadian. This is the Canadian.
I heard you were Canadian.
It's the jury's still out. I've never done a what is that 23andMe or what is the one that's like? Is that what that is? Did I just make something up?
I don't really know about that. No, that's a thing. I don't know.
There it is.
Wait, did I just say that? Anyways, Jacob McCourt. Jacob, how are you?
Hello. I'm well. Thank you for having me. Let's talk about the pink suck boy.
We love it.
Kirby.
Well, since this is your first time here, why don't you give the folks listening or watching kind of the little quick pitch on who you are?
Yeah, so hi, my name is Jacob. I make content on the internet. Thank you so much. No, but I host shows about video games. One's called Left Behind Game Club, Video Game Book Club podcast. We try and be positive, funny, and informative about games. And then Cutscenes is a seasonal show about video game movies and TV. And funny enough, Matt is actually the narrator phone voice for our show. So it's great to be here. Thank you.
I did not know that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. You want a sample of it?
Yeah. Hit me with a sample.
Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast.
He did it.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I just reacted like Tom Holland when he found out that the movie phone lady. Anyway, internet. Sorry. Go ahead, Kirby.
We're off to a great start.
Next up, joining us, you may have seen their work on ShackNews most recently, or the crazy memes they post on the Tetris Twitter account. That one person who loves indie games more than I do, Morgan Shaver. Morgan, how are you?
I'm good. It's Wednesday. I'm awake, so good.
Okay,
very good.
All right. I'm on board with that. I've had to have extra. I had a late night coffee espresso, 4 shots to get
dangerous.
Going, and now my second kombucha because I need to keep the gut health going, keep the good vibes going. And rounding us out, when he's not DJing or hosting 18 different shows like Reignite or Fun and Games, the one, Matt, a.k.a. DJ Stormageddon. Matt, how are you this evening?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. I'm a diehard Kirby fan. There's incredible irony in the fact that Jacob is the guest on Fun and Games Kirby Retrospective, which we recorded this past Sunday, but due to backlogging, won't be out till like way after this. So time travel's fun.
Well, that's just another reason you get this episode, and then you get to listen to Jacob's opinions change from this
exactly.
to that. You get to compare the two.
Exactly.
Well, it's lovely to have you, Matt. You're apparently going for the 2022 like. I'm going to be on all of the retrospectives special episodes that we do. So
look, I'll take it. It helps that two of my favorite video game franchises in history, Metroid and Kirby, both got games. So like,
fair.
I would have never expected that in a million years, and to have them back to back years. So
Oh yeah, Metroid was last year. Never mind, you only got one this year. So we'll see.
Sorry, I'm sure we'll find another.
We'll see what else happens. We'll
figure it out.
But before we get into it, some quick housekeeping. The PTC Movie Club pick for April was Mike's pick, and it is Ex Machina. I don't know what that movie's about. I never know what the movies are about.
Ooh.
So
so good.
We'll
so
see.
good.
Such a good movie.
So if you care about that movie or have never watched that movie, feel free to watch that movie in the month of April. And the last episode that we record in April will be about Ex Machina. So there is that. Anyways, before we get into it, I feel like a common icebreaker, not even just on Kirby podcasts, but out there is, if Kirby ate you, what would you be? Like, what power would Kirby get? And I feel like you can still answer that if you want, but that one's been asked a lot. So I wanted to just go with something a little different, which was, what is everyone's favorite Kirby ability if you have one?
Ooh.
If anyone has one off the bat, they can go first.
I mean, it's so tough, right? There's been so many over the years. I think I said this on Funny Games, so I'll keep it here. My favorite ability is a recent one because of the hat he gets and the vibes he gets. So there's a whip ability in the later DS and 3DS Kirby games, and most recently in Planet Robobot, which I only recently played. And he gets a little cowboy hat. He's got a whip. It's really fast. It's got like Castlevania vibes. Like, I'm into that. So
Okay. All right.
I think that's my all-time favorite.
All right. Morgan, do you have a favorite ability?
Most recently, after playing Forgotten Land, I really had like the ice ability grow on me. I like that he can skate around. I like that he could freeze enemies and then throw those frozen enemies at other enemies. I think that that's really funny. And then I guess a close second is like the UFO Kirby because
So
it's just
good.
so strange.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
good.
cool.
Jacob?
I'd first like to answer your question about what ability Kirby would get if he absorbed me, and it would be depression. But beyond that,
same.
So we all give Kirby the same ability. If Kirby
Yes,
swallowed all
exactly.
three of us at the same time, what would happen? We don't want to know.
He'd get
if it was
anxiety.
Kirby 64, he would get there.
Yeah.
It is.
And I
My
said
favorite
three, there's
ability is
four of
Mirror.
us, because I just don't count. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Your favorite ability was what?
Is Mirror. It's
okay.
in Kirby Superstar and I think one other game, but I just appreciate how it's almost like the skating ability, Morgan, but Kirby just moves like really like almost like Moonwalker-esque, or like Michael Jackson-esque, but sideways, and then got a really cool like block sphere. So Mirror's mine for sure.
Mine is probably very basic, which is the sword. I love Zelda. He gets a little hat, looks a little bit like Link. It's very hard to not love that. The third upgrade for that in Forgotten Land is so good when I didn't know that was what it evolved into, and it made me so happy. But then to do something a little bit different, I'll say I also really love the wheel ability that first shows up in Adventure, because you just turn into a freaking wheel, and that's ridiculous. And as a kid, I loved that ability because like you just zip, you just go. Like it was so stupid and silly, and I loved it. So I'll say the wheel because I don't want to be basic. So Kirby has a lot of games, and we don't have a lot of time. So what I figured is we will go through the games chronologically, release-wise, and if people feel strongly or not strongly about stuff, we chat about it. And if they don't, then we can quickly move on to the next game. And when we get to the game, was everyone's first Kirby game Kirby's Dream Land or no?
No.
Mine was.
Close. I think mine was Tilt and Tumble first, and then it was Dreamland.
So, okay.
Good.
So when we get to the game that was your first game, we'll talk about that experience as well. So without further ado, Kirby's Dream Land released for the Game Boy August 1st, 1992. We're going to do North American release dates just because for a lot of early games, there are different dates for every region. And I figured we'll just keep it easy, keep it all North American, since that is where we all are. So Game Boy August 1st, 1992. It did get re-released from the Nintendo 3DS in 2011 with a remake, but we'll get to that at some point. So Kirby's Dream Land, the beginning. Matt, your first time with Kirby.
Yeah. So, and what's funny is, and it's a fun fact that I told on my own podcast too, Kirby is one of the few Nintendo characters to make his debut on the Game Boy. Most characters debuted elsewhere and then came to the Game Boy, but Kirby launched on the Game Boy back in that fateful year. And I was in public school still because I'm old. Please don't do the math. And a friend of mine, and I quoted him.
Are you older than me, Matt?
Yes,
I did not know
We've
that.
been through this before.
I did not know that.
We've been through this before. I'm an 83 baby.
Why? I did not know that.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
the way you carry yourself, you do not feel like you are that age. But age is just a number. Anyways, Kirby.
It's just a number. You're very sweet. Enough with the compliments. No, but I was in public school, and I accredited a friend of mine that I still talk to, who I think listens to a lot of the stuff that I do. So he'll correct me if I'm absolutely wrong. But I believe my friend Matt, yes, because I had friends also named Matt growing up, it was a common name in Staten Island, I guess, was playing a game on his Game Boy in class, even though he shouldn't be. And it was this little round ball jumping around, eating other enemies. I was like, what is this? He's like, oh, it's Kirby. You want to try it? And I tried it and fell in love with it. And so, like, I begged my parents to get me a Game Boy, and they finally did. I don't remember how, whether it was a used one or whatever else. And the first games I got were Tetris, which I know Morgan will appreciate, and because they all came with it, and Kirby. And I played Kirby obsessively. I love this game so much. It's weird to me, and I think this happens with a lot of folks with games when you're a kid. Like you remember these really short arcadey games being so long and like taking forever to finish. I can knock out Kirby's Dream Land in like a half hour, 45 minutes tops now. I replayed it on the 3DS version very, very recently, and I remember it being so much longer and like this epic adventure, and it's still great and I love it, but it's much more condensed than I thought it was. But yeah, it's a classic. It still holds up. I think it holds up better than some of the later 18 and 16 and 32-bit Kirby's, just because of how basic it is. It's just to the point. It's stripped down. There's no power-ups, which is the only thing that I get bummed about when I replay it. But otherwise, I think it's kind of a tight start to finish, kind of no notes kind of game.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I always forget that Kirby's Dream Land doesn't have copy abilities until I go back and play it again. I always that part for some reason always vanishes from my brain. But I don't personally have a lot of fondness for this game. I did play it and I did have it at some point, but it wasn't my first Kirby game. So I think as a kid, when I did discover it, I was kind of always like, well, how come Kirby can't turn into this or do that or whatever? So I think I had a little bit of weird resentment of like, but my NES Kirby is so much better. Does anyone else have anything else to add for Kirby's Dream Land? Damn, Matt, everyone said, fuck Kirby's Dream Land. They said, fuck your childhood.
It's far from my favorite Kirby, but it is definitely the first one.
Yeah. It is good for what it is. And I mean, and it obviously
Absolutely.
introduced and established what is an iconic game franchise and character going forward. And a lot of interesting history behind it, where the design for Kirby wasn't even necessarily the original design, and it was a placeholder. And then it eventually stuck and stayed. Kirby was initially supposed to be pink, but because of the monochromatic palette of the Game Boy, they couldn't add color. So he's white in the first games and on the promotional materials. But that all changes when we get to the next game, May 1st, 1993 on the NES, Kirby's Adventure, which this was my first Kirby game. Was this anyone else's first Kirby game? Or so this is like, will always be one of my favorite Kirby games, just simply because it was my first Kirby game. Like, I think it's hard to kind of go against your nostalgia in a lot of ways. It is, basic in a lot of ways compared to future Kirby games, but it does introduce what becomes Kirby's iconic ability, which is the ability to swallow and take other characters' abilities. And I thought, just as a child, this was a game that, like, I can see why kids now discovering games that discover Kirby would fall in love with Kirby, because it's an easy game. Most Kirby games, I would say, are easy, very entry level. They do have depth and difficulty in certain games with 100%ing things, or looking for secret exits or passageways, or looking for other collectibles in future games. But it really just is, I think, you look at certain platformers, like Yoshi is another example of, like, a lot of Yoshi's platforming games are easy, but I feel like Kirby is a better balance of being easy but also having challenge to it most of the time, compared to some of those other games like Yoshi. But I love this game. Kirby's Adventure is I mean, it's been re-released plenty of times. It's been on almost every virtual console that Nintendo's put out. I love this game. It's fantastic.
Box art is iconic for this
it's
one
so good.
also.
It's so
Yeah.
good. Mm-hmm. And I wish the star rod had more use in future games, because, gosh, I love the star rod so much.
That boss battle
Beyond
music
being
is like the best boss battle music in the history of gaming, I'd say.
It is
When
very
you fight
good.
Nightmare.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is very good. That whole end sequence of fighting Dedede and then fighting the final two bosses, are they both Nightmare? It's like the circle
they're
in the
just
sky, and
different,
then
yeah.
okay, yeah. Wow, like, as a child, ridiculous, epic. Like, come on now, this little pink guy is fighting things in the stars. I love it.
I don't know about y'all, but I was terrified when I was younger because I played the Super Nintendo games first, but then went back to the Nintendo games because my parents did have a Nintendo. But it's Krakow, the cloud with the eye, so scary. That gave me nightmares.
Amazing.
I can see why. I mean, it is a scary enemy. Oh man, Kirby's Adventure is very good.
I did discover a secret hard mode for Kirby's Adventure this year when I was streaming it. It's playing it on the shitty Switch emulator. It makes the game much harder.
That will definitely do it.
It's brutal.
That brings us to an interesting side game. Kirby's first side game, Kirby's Pinball Land for the Game Boy, November 1993. Has anyone played this or have anything strongly to say about this? I haven't played this game.
Morgan, why don't you start us off?
I love Kirby's Pinball. I had that, and I also had Pokemon Pinball for Game Boy, and I just put an obscene amount of time into it. And like also back in the day, like the old Windows computers had the Space Pinball. So anything pinball just really appealed to me in the day. And I mean, it still does, but just like it's just so much fun and it's so addicting, and you just go through it. And I don't know, I put probably more time into that than I have a lot of other Kirby games, just because I would keep going back to it and playing it just to pass the time kind of thing.
Yeah. What is interesting to note about this game too is that like Nintendo is no stranger to pinball games. They've made plenty of pinball games throughout their time making pinball games, but Kirby was the first time they used like one of their like mascots to do, like, because Pokemon Pinball came out after. There was a Mario Pinball game,
Metroid
Pinball, but Kirby was the first time. Like, they had made pinball games prior to that, but then Kirby was the first one to get like a mascot pinball game, which I thought was interesting. This is a game I should probably go find a copy of and play, because I do love pinball as well, and an excuse to play a Kirby game I never played is I don't need another reason. That's it.
Is that one available on the 3DS or Wii U? Because I know that it has now become increasingly difficult to get games on those platforms from the Virtual Console. But I wonder if that one is on either, because that to me strikes me as a 3DS Virtual Console game.
According to the notes that I took, it says it did get re-released on the Nintendo 3DS in 2012, so it must be on the Nintendo 3DS eShop. So if you're listening to this,
unless it is in that weird ambassador package that nobody got.
I have that.
Yeah, Brendan's got that.
I can, if my 3DS is charged. I don't know why my 3DS is next to me, but I'll open that while we're sitting here. But that brings us to our next spin-off, which is Kirby's Dream Course for the Super Nintendo, released on February 1st, 1995, and then that also got re-released on the Virtual Console for the Wii and the Wii U at later dates. Does anyone have fondness or things to say about Dream Course?
Yeah, I loved Dream Course. I was awful at it. And since it's on the not great emulator on the Nintendo Switch, I played it there too, and I'm still not great at it. And it could be anyone's guess why. But I loved this game. It was really interesting because like it was a golf game, but it had these polygonal graphics that weren't super common yet at the time. And also when Kirby rolled through certain enemies, he'd get power-ups, and it's just such a, you had to like kill a certain amount of enemies on the board to make the hole appear and then get Kirby in the hole. It was just such an interesting mechanic. I had forgotten a lot of the game's quirks until recently. Waypoint streamed on their YouTube and Twitch channel them playing it, Kato and Patrick Klepek playing it, and like the physics seemed maddening in a way that I had forgotten in the later levels.
Go ahead, Jacob.
I was just going to say, I think I've watched more of Waypoint's streams of that than I've actually played the game.
So for me, this game, and this will be a theme for me with Kirby, is I didn't own a lot of Kirby games growing up, like when they were coming out, but that's kind of why I love the Wii Virtual Console, which I'm sure many people love for a lot of different reasons, but it was because it gave me the ability as a older person with money to go and be like, oh, I can buy this game that I never got to play. So Dream Course was one of those games that when that got added to the Virtual Console, I like immediately downloaded and sunk a lot of time into. And to what you're saying, Matt, anytime I go back to Dream Course, the mechanics are kind of mind-boggling to wrap your head around at first, because they kind of don't feel like the way they should feel. But then once you kind of get into the groove, it kind of gets in line with what's going on. Another interesting tidbit about Kirby's Dream Course is that it was originally developed as not a Kirby game. It was a separate game called Special T-Shot. But because of the success of Kirby at the time, HAL Laboratory, they basically shelved the project to work on more Kirby stuff, and then eventually went back to it and redid things to obviously introduce specific Kirby mechanics and make it a Kirby game. So we could have got a really different mini golf game, but I'm glad we didn't.
Yeah, same.
Anyone else for Dream Course? That brings us to the first of Kirby's many puzzle games, which is Kirby's Avalanche, which I deleted the date for. No, I didn't. Kirby's Avalanche for the Super Nintendo on April 25th, 1995. Does anyone have thoughts on Kirby's Avalanche?
Not really.
I just want to say that there was like a very iconic era of puzzle games inspired by like characters from both Sega and Nintendo. So I think of Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, and Morgan, if I'm stealing your thunder here as a puzzle game fan, I apologize. But and then there's Pokemon Puzzle League, which I found was like iconic, and this game I would carry among them. I've probably not logged as many hours on this one as I have Pokemon Puzzle League, which I think was that Super Nintendo or N64? But either way,
Puzzle League, I think, was Nintendo 64.
Iconic games.
Yeah. Yeah, and Yoshi was out at this time, and Yoshi Cookie, I believe, was also out at this time. Wario's Woods, like so many different puzzle games that they released. Yeah, I put quite a bit of time into Avalanche. I was never very good at it. When I was much younger, like I don't know that I really understood the mechanics for these puzzle games, but I like to see the characters on screen, and I like to try and make the match. I feel like a Kirby's Avalanche like re-release on like mobile would do really well now, or something like that, like a Nintendo puzzle game on mobile. I'm surprised they haven't done something like that because they have so many puzzle games in their repertoire.
I mean, even just throwing a new version of Kirby's Avalanche on Nintendo Online, as something like Tetris 99, but Kirby Avalanche, I think
that could be cool.
Would be very exciting. For those of you who do not know, this was also a different game. In Japan, this was Super Puyo Puyo, but they, I believe, think that it wouldn't have done well outside of Japan, or at least in the United States. So they brought this game over here, and this is the only Kirby game that has never released in Japan because it didn't need to because it was a different game. So I'm surprised it never got re-released in Japan in any way. Maybe it did in some future collection or something. I'd be surprised if it really never got some sort of port in some way. But I thought that was interesting. I've never played a Puyo Puyo game though. Not even Puyo Puyo versus Tetris, which I've played that one. I mean, have you played Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine?
Yeah,
I've played Robotnik.
Effectively the same thing.
Yeah, I've played a lot of games like that. The problem is that like, and I'll be careful with my words, I feel like I'm good at Tetris. I'm not like Morgan good at Tetris. I feel like I can hold a little bit of my own in Tetris, but like Puyo Puyo style games, I'm so bad at. Like I can't go fast enough, and I'll just get destroyed. So that is Kirby's Avalanche, which brings us to the next game, Kirby's Dream Land 2 for the Game Boy, May 1st, 1995. This is Kirby's return to platforming after a brief little stint doing some side games. Does anyone have fond thoughts on Kirby's Dream Land 2?
I hate to be the only one talking, but like the Game Boy games were like I loved Kirby's Adventure, but like the two Game Boy games were like some of the more iconic memories I have of Kirby, especially since this introduced the Animal companions, Rick, Ku, and Kine, however you say the fish's name. And like, it also is the first time Kirby's abilities got diversified, where like, if you had an ability outside of an animal companion, it worked one way, and then if you had an ability with an animal companion, it worked another way. The one I'll always remember is Spark, which just electrocutes things around you. When you were in the fish, you'd shoot a light bulb, and that was just awesome. I loved that.
Yeah.
But it's one of my favorite Kirby games, aside from some others we'll talk about later. And like, it was just it started the trend of Kirby adding mechanics that are so different, yet it doesn't ruin what makes Kirby Kirby. Like they find a way to make it work.
Yeah. This was another one where I never played when it came out. I played it much later, and I think I might like Dreamland 3 a little bit better. But it did a lot of interesting things for the Kirby formula, like you said, which introduced partner allies. I don't know if they have like a group term that the game uses, but his friends, basically his animal companions. A very interesting twist to the Kirby series. That brings us to Kirby's Block Ball for the Game Boy, May 1996. This is a game I have not played. From what I understand, it is essentially a breakout type of Kirby game.
Yeah,
that
much.
was my understanding on it too. It is breakout for N-Gage. Thank you.
I feel like we can probably move on from Block Ball.
Yes.
Another game that I feel like for a lot of people is a top tier Kirby game, which is Kirby Superstar for the Super Nintendo, which released on September 20th, 1996, and got re-released a few different times on virtual consoles. This is another one of those games where I never owned this game as a kid, but there were a few games, and there are 2 Kirby games like this, where I had friends who had this game. So whenever I went over their house, like after school or something, I'd be like, hey, can we play some Kirby Superstar? Like, I would be like, I don't want to do anything else. Like, I came over because, like, I can tolerate you and you have Kirby. Can we play Kirby? And that would be like, and I know those people don't listen to this show, so I have no problem saying that. But Kirby in the Crystal Shards, Superstar, and Donkey Kong Country. 3 games I never owned, but I had friends who had them, and I would always go to their house just to play them. Does anyone have fondness for Superstar?
I do. Yeah. Kind of a similar situation where I didn't own the game. I played it elsewhere. So when I was growing up, my mom would like leave me at a babysitter's house, and the babysitter had teenage boys, so they had all of the games, and they would just let me have whatever to play with. And they had Kirby Superstar, and it was such a fun game. I remember playing that one a lot, and then Donkey Kong Country, and kind of switching between the two. But it's so pretty and vibrant. I remember it being a standout for being like one of the prettiest Kirby games, at least at the time that I had played. And it has really cool kind of, I don't know if intricate's the right word, but very interesting levels. Like there's like the cave offensive one and Milky Way wishes. And it's just I don't know, it's just a really fun game. And one I wish I had so I could play it more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have fond memories of that game.
So like Kirby's Adventure introduced like mini games to Kirby like super early in the series. I feel like Superstar is when Kirby got to really start to shine as like platforming, core to what Kirby is, but also like we want to do all these other fun things with Kirby, and I feel like Superstar they got to really kind of dabble in different types of gameplay and mechanics and do things a little bit more wacky in that world. Anybody else? Superstar?
Yeah, I would call this game probably one of my like 2 favorite games of all time.
Oh,
Like
wow,
if you
okay.
had to ask me, I would say either Kirby Superstar or Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which I think is a bit of a controversial pick, but to your point, Morgan, it's the little things. It's the animation, the little flares, like is it Dynabird or Dynablade? The bird and how their neck is like incredibly articulate, which I had never seen before. I mean, maybe Vector Man for the Genesis, but I'd not seen anything like that when I was growing up. And it's just a game that you could, there are 7 smaller games, really like 4 main games in it, that there's a progression story-wise with them. But each of them, can take anywhere from 30 on Spring Breeze, which I think is another remake of Kirby Dreamland or Kirby's Adventure, or like a retelling, if I'm not mistaken. And then, the final one, which I can't remember the final one that you play after the Great Cave Offensive, which has treasure hunting mechanics on a Kirby game. But it's a little bit longer, and there's that scene of you jumping on Wheelie to get off the halberd that I'll just never forget.
Yeah, it's one of those games that really changed how Kirby worked. Also, it's also the Kirby game that introduced kissing the homies for more health, which is it's you had a partner system, where if you pressed one button, you would release your power. If you pressed a different button, your power would become an ally. The enemy that you ate would reform as an ally who helped you, and you could use that to play multiplayer. And if someone took damage and then someone got a health item, you would kiss your partner and you would share health, and it was cool. And like, I don't know, as a kid, I don't never remember anyone making a big deal about it. I feel like if that came out now, like right-wing nutsos would be like, oh, they're kissing. Like it's because it was just a thing. It was just how this world worked, and it was neat. And I think also the diversity of the powers were unlike anything we'd ever seen. And Morgan's right, like I've loved the sprite work in probably every Kirby game, but there was something about the vibrancy of the Super Nintendo sprites and how bright they were and how they popped against those backgrounds. Like I mean, Forgotten Land, which we'll get to, is gorgeous, but like I think the earlier sprite work and like the sprite work in the Game Boy Advance era, you know, were unlike some of the sprite work we've even seen to date.
I will say that the Samurai Kirby minigame and the Megaton Punch minigame, like as recent as before COVID, like in recent years, like friends would come over and be like, all right, we gotta have a quick little session of like who is gonna win in these game modes, and have like a good like hour or two of playing those two game modes because they're just like stupid fun. I love them so much.
Gourmet Race doesn't have a lot of replayability, but like it's fun.
Yeah,
totally.
This is a great Kirby game. I would love to see them do like not a remaster of this. I think they did re-release these things in a package for the
Ultra
3DS.
on DS.
Yeah, they remade it for the DS.
I would love for them to just go the full like let's make a new Superstar type of game that's just like all these different out there modes and different things, and I think they could really kind of, especially after seeing what they were able to do to kind of reinvigorate Kirby for the Forgotten Land. Like I feel like they could go the extra nonsensical step and get something really cool out there. That brings us to Kirby's Star Stacker for the Game Boy, July 7, 1997. I don't know if anyone has played this game or has anything to say about this game.
I own this game.
Oh, do you?
Go
Have
ahead,
you
Matt.
played? I was just gonna say,
I have.
I can broadly say I've played every Kirby game. That doesn't mean I remember all of them. This
Fair.
isn't that I don't know that I remember it, but I know I've played it.
That was my comment. I own this, and I don't remember that at all.
It is a Dr. Mario style puzzle game, from what I understand.
Oh, okay.
So
Got it.
I do love Dr. Mario, so I should maybe seek out this game, maybe play a ROM or something, because I can't imagine some of these Kirby games to find physical copies of would be cheap. So
No, for sure not.
But that brings us to Kirby's Dream Land 3 for the Super Nintendo, November 1st, 1997. This is another one of those games where I never got to unfortunately play it when it came out, but when it got ported to the Virtual Console, one of those instant, oh, awesome, a Kirby game I never got to play, I need to play this. And although I don't personally love this game, I do think this is one of the like most gorgeous looking Kirby games. I love the art style in this game so much. It brings back companions, so you get to, and I believe it adds more companions as well. A few more animal friends. But does anyone have fondness or things to say about this game? No? I'm surprised. I mean, we can move on. We don't have to talk about every game, but
Matt and I have differing opinions on this game.
Yeah, I was waiting for Jacob to speak. I replayed it recently, but I did admit, so I replayed it on stream and I struggled with the level design. I think that could be more the fault of, like we said, the incredible emulation that the Switch has. But I will agree, like sound and look, it's one of the most interesting and best Kirby games ever made. I feel like the level design is subpar, especially compared to stuff that's come before and comes after. But I also barely played it when it first came out, and my only time really sitting with it was on the emulator. And so I think if maybe I can get either an old copy or play it on a different kind of emulator, I might enjoy it more. But I agree, like the hand-drawn visuals, like I love when Nintendo does that. Like it's why I love Yoshi's Island, Yoshi's Story on the N64, and like the Crafted World games and like Epic Yarn, which we'll get to. Like I love when Nintendo like does different things with their visuals than just straight up like good graphics.
I think the thing that I'll just say about it is this is probably like I started with these two Kirby games with Superstar and with Dreamland 3, and then kind of worked my way back when I was a kid, because I'm a few years younger than Matt, so that's probably where I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah. The thing that I always remember is there's ways that you can essentially get a secret, star piece for each level, and some of them are simple. But there are some that like almost have their own like small sub stories to them, where in one of the levels I remember you just have to avoid crushing these like really red tulips, and if you crush even one of them, there's a kid at the end who's just incredibly sad. And if you make sure to save all the tulips, there's a moment where the child is happy, and there's a tulip who is also kind of just swaying in the wind. So the little like fun, intricate secrets that you can get in this game, I think were the only time that really happened to my memory in the Kirby series.
So this is Undertale, is what you're telling me.
Maybe.
Not quite as sinister, I don't think, but yeah, sure.
It's funny that you brought that up. In my notes, I had, okay, I thought my computer just froze. I had a heart attack. When I was preparing my notes for this, there are a few Kirby games, and this is one of them, where there are more than one ending. Like there are multiple ending cinematics, and I did not know that any Kirby game had that, and this is one of them where I believe whatever the collectible is it rainbow bits or something? There is something you collect.
Yep.
And if you collect all of them, you get the true ending cinematic. And if you do not, at the end, one of the companions, I think it's the fish, will like stop and look at the screen, and then it will say the end with a question mark. So I don't know. I thought that was really interesting for a Kirby game.
It's Undertale. Got it.
It is Undertale. It is absolutely Undertale. So Kirby's Dream Land 3. Anything else before we move on to Kirby's first 3D adventure? Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards, which released on the Nintendo 64 June 26, 2000. And like I said before, this is one of those games I never owned, and I had to pretend to be friends with someone in order to play it. And I'm not mad about it. No regrets. I don't love this game. Like, I want to love this game, and I just don't.
Yeah, this game, it's funny. This will be the second time I've brought up Forgotten Land, the newest game. But, like, I thought this was going to be Forgotten Land, right? Because we got Mario 64, and that was in 3D, open world run around. And so I was like, oh, they're making a Kirby game on the N64. It's going to be the same thing. Nope. It's just this weird sort of behind the camera, like behind Kirby, side slanted camera angle for most of the stages, and then like these weird level designs. The only thing, and Jacob reminded me of this recently, it's one of the few games that when you combined powers, you got different powers. In the later games, like if you swallowed two enemies at once, you'll just get like a roulette wheel and then get a power. But in this, you could actually combine the powers, which was a cool idea in an otherwise kind of mediocre Kirby game. Yeah.
I didn't hate that it wasn't fully 3D. Like, I'm fine with it being 3D on a 2D plane for the most part. I didn't, for me personally, and I haven't revisited it in a long time, so maybe my opinion might change, but I didn't think the level design was that great. I did love the combo abilities where you could mix abilities. I don't know if it's just the base stone ability or if you have to mix it with something, but the fact that you can be Stone Kirby and just walk was always very funny to me. I loved that. But yeah, if anyone wants to defend or say anything else about Kirby 64, now is the time.
I mean, Kirby becomes a curling stone at one point, so my Canadian heart adored that.
All right, fair.
But the thing I always think about is that this game reminds me a lot of Mega Man Legends for the N64 and PlayStation, in that it is like the series' first attempt to do 3D, and I think I like this game more than Mega Man Legends, but I can see the flaws in both.
Yeah.
Early 3D platformers that weren't Super Mario 64. I mean, this one was 3D models like 2D plane or 2.5D plane. But yeah, I can definitely see the flaws in this one.
Morgan, any thoughts on Kirby 64?
Same thoughts as everyone else. Kind of mediocre. I thought the visuals, like out of all the Kirby games, I think it's the ugliest Kirby game in my opinion.
It really looks bad. Like, even, especially looking back at it now, I watched a video of it earlier and I was like, oh no, oh dear, Kirby, what happened to you? But this brings us to, I believe Morgan said was their first Kirby game, which is Kirby's Tilt and Tumble for the Game Boy Color, April 9th, 2001. And no one else should take this other than, to start, than Morgan.
Okay. So I got a lot of my Game Boy Color games from like secondhand sources.
Hmm.
So Kirby's Tilt and Tumble was something I came across at a yard sale with my mother. And I liked the cartridge, and I knew Kirby at that point. So it's like, oh, I didn't know that there was this Kirby game. What is Tilt and Tumble? Oh, the cartridge looks weird. All right, cool. So like getting it home, playing it, and it's so different from anything else that I had played, Kirby included. And it was so difficult to me for some reason, like the turning mechanics. I remember I would play it and I would get frustrated and like shake the Game Boy because it was just like there was intricate parts to it that are like definitely challenging.
Hmm.
And for some reason I liked that though. Like it kept me coming back to it because I would like put it down, then I'd be like, okay, I think I can figure it out. Let's try this again. And so I really liked Tilt and Tumble. I think it's a weird idea. I like that Forgotten Land kind of bring back a reference to it with the tilt and roll Kirby. I'm also really bad at that. Um, nothing has changed, but it's just fun. Like even when you suck at the game, it's still kind of fun to like mess around with, kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, this is one of those games that I missed, and I'm sad that I did. But this would be, Matt kind of alluded to this with a different Kirby game, but this would be like a perfect game for them to make a new version of and put it on mobile. Like talking about like you want the perfect phone game, this would be a fantastic game. Pretty much every smartphone has an accelerometer that works, well. I mean, the Switch, the Switch's controllers have them, so you can do it on the Switch too. But I feel like this would just be a really good game to put on mobile. I think it would do really well. I just looked up what a cartridge for this costs on eBay, and it's not something I want to spend money on right now. But this is definitely something I would need to figure out a way to play at some point because it looks amazing. Anyone else for Tilt and Tumble?
I mean, it's one of the, it's going to be rare that I don't open my mouth on one of these games because it's one of the few franchises where I've literally touched everything. But
Listen,
I think
this is why you're here, Matt.
yeah, I guess I'm the Kirby expert. There are worse things to be known for, I guess. But no, I think Morgan's right. Like there was something really interesting about this weird little game, right? Like, and I remember playing, what was it called? Loco Roco on the PSP. That's pretty much this, but like different. Like you tilted the PSP to do stuff, and there's physics, and like I love when I don't always love puzzle games, but I love when puzzle games or games that are not your run-of-the-mill adventure game do something different with the mechanics or do something a little funky. And I remember Tilted Tumble being of that era. A lot of Game Boy Color games I feel like had like these bigger cartridges with these weird things. Like I the one I always think of is Boktai, The Sun Is in Your Hand, which I never played, but I've heard so much about, and is apparently a Kojima joint, which I also didn't know.
Kojima joint.
It's wild.
That game has a sequel as well. Yeah, gimmicked cartridges we were talking about before the show started. Drill Dozer and WarioWare Twisted, Game Boy Advance. But yeah, give me a gimmick cartridge more often, please, and thank you.
I'm trying.
Not just when I lick my Switch cartridge and I get Bitrix on my face.
I'm trying to find a quick, correct answer without speaking incorrectly, but it looks like Kirby Tilt and Tumble was the first accelerometer Game Boy game. So like that preceded WarioWare Twisted, which wasn't a Game Boy Advance game, so that's I guess obvious. It wasn't the first like special cartridge game because I believe Pokemon Pinball came out before it, and that had a Rumble Pack. But yeah, it looks like they like to mess around with Kirby. Kirby likes to be the experimental series. That's very interesting. I didn't realize that until just now. That brings us to a remake of the original game, Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland, which released on the Game Boy Advance December 2nd, 2002. I never played this. I didn't really, I love Kirby. I love the first, I love Adventure more, but I do have a fondness for Dreamland. Has anyone besides Matt played this?
So yeah, this is actually, Nightmare in Dreamland is a remake of Kirby's Adventure, not Kirby's Dreamland.
Oh.
Yeah, it is a completely rekitted from top to bottom remake of the original Kirby with the sprites of the Game Boy Advance era. I think it was the first game to have those vibrant sprites that they use in pretty much every Game Boy Advance game after. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the essential way to play that game. And so if you haven't played it, Brenden, I highly recommend it.
I always just assumed that it was Dreamland, and apparently in my note-taking also didn't even look into it more. I was like, yeah, it's Dreamland. Yeah.
It's Kirby's Adventure, and it's the better version. And I still play Kirby's Adventure, the original, but like this has better graphics. The music's all remixed and remastered, and the sprites are awesome. Even the opening little like vignettes from Kirby's Adventure were like redone. It's really great. If you haven't played it, I highly recommend it, Brenden, because I think it's the way to play that game.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll look into it. And I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, remixes of the original music, push my glasses up. But I do love the music in Kirby's Adventure, so
yeah,
this has got to live up to that, because the music in Kirby Adventure is like some of the best in the Kirby series, in my opinion, and honestly, some of the best video game music, like full stop. Like there are some very memorable songs there, like you had mentioned earlier. The boss music is just feed it into me, like stick that right into my veins. Anyone else for the remake of Adventure? That brings us to a cult classic, which I have a problem with this, and I have a problem, I think, with a lot of GameCube games. I love the GameCube, and I love the GameCube.
Watch your next words.
Listen,
watch these next words.
Choose carefully, Brad.
You think you know where I'm going, but you don't just yet. I love the GameCube, and I love Kirby's Air Ride, and I love a lot of GameCube games. When I was in high school and the GameCube was out, everyone taught, like, this was like height of console wars when you're in that age, and like Nintendo's kid system, all this stuff, like Kirby's Air Ride is one button, what is this thing? And I had to like go to bat for so many Nintendo games during that time. And like I don't hate, because I'm happy that people enjoy games, but like as an adult, and sometimes people are like, oh, Wind Waker's, one of the best Zelda games. I'm like, not back then. Everyone hated that game, and I loved that game. And it's like, it's weird to see like Kirby's Air Ride was another one of those things where I had to like beg my friends to play Kirby's Air Ride. Like, please, let's play this game instead of Smash for once or whatever. And I love Smash too, but it was always like I had to like convince people to play GameCube games with me. So maybe that's why I have a chip on my shoulder when it comes to the GameCube and people looking back at it with rosy glasses now. But I'm happy that it has like this sort of cult following of like, this is actually a really great Kirby game. I wish they would port it or make a new one or whatever. And I agree, they should definitely port it or make a new one, because this game is... So Masahiro Sakurai is the creator of Kirby, hasn't worked on every Kirby game. Obviously, many people know Sakurai from Smash. But Air Ride is one of the Kirby games that Sakurai worked on. And I feel like if you kind of know a lot of Sakurai's games outside of just Kirby and Smash, you can kind of see his style of game development and like what he does. And I feel like Kirby's Air Ride kind of shows a lot of him in that game. And I mean, for the time, I feel like this was I struggle to say ahead of its time. I just feel like it was very different than what other types of like racing / I don't know what other category you put this in, like party game maybe, type of game that was being made at the time. But I know other people seem to have also very passionate opinions about this, so take it away.
Jacob, I'll let you go first.
City Race or City Race?
City Trials.
City Trials, thank you. 10 minutes, gather your best items for a cart and compete in a 1-minute minigame. I think that although structurally I have maybe some issues about like 10 minutes of gathering for like at times 10 seconds of gameplay. But like you said, Brenden, I think that I see Sakurai, like I see Subspace Emissary here in this game.
Yes.
Just in that game mode. So I was also the person who would be like, come to my house and play Halo, but also we're going to play Custom Robo, Strikers, Mario Baseball, and all of the other great party games that were on the GameCube. So
that's what you have to do. You have to sneak them in the list. Yeah, we'll play some Halo, but first we're going to also play, Godzilla Battle for All Monsters Melee, whatever that was. That was a great slept-on GameCube game. Just going to throw that in there.
Yeah.
Grab it by the handle and just shove it in their faces.
Yeah, Destroy All Monsters Melee. That was the name of the title.
Air Ride was one of my favorite GameCube games. There's never been a racing game like it. It's been almost 20 years since that game came out. Where is my sequel to Kirby Air Ride? Sakurai, I know you're done with Smash. Make another Air Ride. Bring it to us on the Switch, because like Jacob's right. Like City Trial was hit or miss depending on what you got afterwards. But the the moment where you're riding around on a warp star through this giant city, just collecting whatever you can and smashing into other people, and like it was just the best. And like even the straight up race modes were fun. And like they've never done anything like that with Kirby again. And like I'm gonna say this here on record, I think this is a better racing game than Double Dash, and I love Double Dash, but I love this game more. I just killed Jacob.
I don't know if I'm gonna comment on that. I will say
fine.
Kirby's Air Ride is one of the few games where it lives in my brain in such a happy place, such a good, warm place. I'm very hesitant to play that game now because I don't want to know if it doesn't hold up. I would rather it stay in my brain as this lovely thing and have those memories, and they just live there, flying around in my head on a warp star, stay there. I'm nervous. I don't want, because for a lot of these games, especially the ones I haven't played, but something like Air Ride, which I haven't played in so long, I watched videos on it this week, and I was like, oh man, I don't know if this game is good now. Like I don't know. Morgan, any thoughts on Air Ride? Is this a game of import to you?
Yeah, I had a lot of GameCube games. I think I had more GameCube games growing up than I did N64 games for whatever reason. And Kirby Air Ride was one of them. Played that a lot. It is definitely a party game. I remember too, like GameCube games, they had a lot of party GameCube games, like in that era. And yeah, it's just something special about Air Ride. It's charming. It's adorable. Like you feel happy when you play it. There's just something so friendly about it that just compels you to like go back in. And I like went between, like that was my happy game to play after Luigi's Mansion, because I do like Luigi's Mansion, Kirby, and then Luigi's Mansion, Kirby. And and I get what you're saying, Brenden, about like looking back at it with like rose-colored glasses. Like I wonder if I would like it as much now as I did as a kid. But it's just it's got a special place in my heart for sure.
Same. That was like, of all of the GameCube games where I had to convince people to play with me, that was probably the one that was like the hardest to convince people to be like, no, let's do this. We'll have fun. I promise. And we always had fun, but it was like a chore to get people to, Godzilla's one thing. You're smashing things. Smash is, you don't have to convince anyone to play Smash. Mario Kart, kind of the same, but like Custom Robo or this or, any other.
Donkey Konga, let's play.
Listen, I will go down on those bongos, no problem. Like I'm all about Donkey Konga. Jungle
Duly
Beat,
noted.
Donkey Konga, yes. That brings us to Kirby's first Metroidvania, Kirby in the Amazing Mirror, for the Game Boy Advance, released on October 18th, 2004. A game I have not played. It is part of the Ambassador program on my DS, my 3DS. I do have this game. I have never played this game. Does anyone have thoughts on the Amazing Mirror?
I will just say I revisited it recently when I was doing my like revisit of the Kirby games I had access to, and it has not aged well. I remember loving it as a kid, but like there's no map except when you go to like a certain location and like you travel through these mirrors, and it looks gorgeous. You can summon other Kirbys to help you way before Kirby Mass Attack, but like it's not a good Metroidvania. And I'm also kind of a Metroidvania snob on a level because I love, as your listeners know, a Metroidvania or two. And so, yeah, I don't think it's aged well. I think if they remade it with like a good map system and a way to mark the map, it could be a lot of fun. But yeah, it definitely doesn't hold up on any level.
So it needs the Metroid Zero Mission treatment. It needs the 100%. Samus Returns treatment.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyone else for the Amazing Mirror? All right, we are getting close to the hour, and I don't want to keep everyone here too long. So for some of these, if we don't have strong opinions either way, we can kind of move through. That brings us to Kirby and the Canvas Curse for the Nintendo DS, June 13th, 2005.
I want to make a quick note here and say that what I appreciate about Kirby is he's always used in an experimental way, and the little guy's very malleable from a gameplay sense. This game is cool. It's novel. I don't necessarily think it's something that I would recommend anyone play the entire way through. But if there's a way that you can touch this game, or Rainbow Curse for the Wii U, I would highly encourage it because it's super unique and interesting. You draw a path for Kirby and make your way through stages that way.
That brings us to Kirby Squeak Squad for the Nintendo DS, December 4th, 2006, a game I have not played. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on this one, or we can skirt through.
It's pretty much just a standard Kirby game. This where you hunt treasures. There was not much unique to this, like everything else. It kind of just was. It's a Kirby game. All right, let's move on.
Kirby Superstar Ultra for the Nintendo DS, which was a re-release or retelling of Superstar. I don't know if it added anything differently, or if anyone has anything fond to say about this re-release or not. I'll take that as we can move on to Kirby's Epic Yarn for the Wii from October 17th, 2010. This is a game that I love the art style, and I like what they did with the different type of mechanics. I don't really like this game, though, unfortunately.
It's an imperfect game. It was meant to be a Prince Fluff vehicle, who's the second character, the second player, and then ended up getting turned into a Kirby game. I love the art style. Fun fact, first time Kirby ever turned into a car, way before mouthful mode. He turned into a car in that game. But yeah, I agree with you, Brenden. I really love it, but I like your discussion of Air Ride. I think I love it back here in my brain. I don't know that, and I know that the 3DS port of it is god-awful, I've heard. So, like, I think I'm happy for it to live back here somewhere and not ever replay it.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
That pushes us forward to Kirby Mass Attack for the Nintendo DS, September 19th, 2011. Anyone have thoughts on Mass Attack? Kirby's Return to Dreamland on the Wii in October 24th, 2011, which I believe that is the remake of the first game, correct? Okay. Anyone have anything to say about this? It's fine if we don't.
Say something quick about Mass Attack.
Get in
I
there.
recently played Mass Attack for about 30 minutes. It's cool. It's very much like halfway between Loco Roco and Patapon. So, cool little game. A little different.
We then get Kirby's Dream Collection for the Wii, September 16, 2012. I do own this. This is just a Kirby collection. It does have, I believe it has like a museum mode and stuff. Like, it has some interesting other additional things in there. I think it may have also came with like an album that has Kirby music on it and stuff.
And 3 episodes of the anime as well, I think.
Oh, okay. Kirby Right Back at Ya. Right? That's the name of it? Kirby Right Back at Ya?
Yeah. Kirby.
Kirby Triple Deluxe for the Nintendo 3DS for May 2nd, 2014. I love this game. This is like one of my favorite Kirby games. I think this is like up there for me as a top Kirby game. I haven't replayed it since it came out. I'm pretty sure 100% it when it came out. But I love this game so much. It was just, I thought it had good use of the DS. I had good use of like the kind of the foreground and background. You get to jump between the two a lot in different platforming sections. I thought it had, good level design and good secrets and stuff like that. I like the power-ups in the game. This to me is a very, very good kind of base Kirby platformer. I'm a big fan of this one. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on this.
I mean, I agree with you. I loved it. I thought it was just a solid Kirby game, which is what we got a lot of in this era. Just like solid Kirby games that do Kirby, let Kirby do what he does best, kind of, side-scrolling action platformer.
I think that era of the 3DS had a lot of just good Nintendo like platformers in general. Like I know this is a kind of controversial take. I liked Super Mario, New Super Mario Brothers 2, the one with all the gold coins. I liked that game. I think a lot of people don't like that game. I also love Super Mario 3D Land. I think that's like a very much slept on Mario game and one of the best Mario games. And I love 3D World, but like you wouldn't have 3D World without 3D Land. So, let's just be honest, call it what it is. That brings us to, unless anyone else has Triple Deluxe, Kirby and the Rainbow Curse for the Wii U, February 20th, 2015, which Jacob had alluded to. If you haven't played Canvas Curse, Rainbow Curse is the successor to that game. It's the similar style of gameplay where you're drawing rainbow ropes or something. You're drawing rainbow bridges for Kirby to move around on.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the few games that is going to stick on the Wii U. I mean, I think Game & Wario, that game, and maybe one or two others that are going to stay on that platform and never make their way to the Switch, I think, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's probably the case. This next game, I think, for a lot of people is a top tier, if not one of the best Kirby games. This is Kirby Planet Robobot for the Nintendo 3DS, which released on June 10th, 2016. I know at least Matt loves this game. I don't know if anyone else has fond thoughts or negative thoughts about Planet Robobot.
I mean, if no one else does, it's not. So if you follow me on Twitter, very recently I posted a ton of screenshots about this game.
Mm-hmm.
Friend of all pods and all gaming sites, the incredible Rebecca Valentine. When I posted that I'd never played this game, the shock and horror that Reb had, knowing that I love Kirby, and Reb was like, "Matt, you have to play this game." And for listeners of this show, you'll remember when we were talking about Metroid, I didn't play Samus Returns until like 3 months or 2 months before Dread came out, and fell in love with that remake. And I bought it digitally on my 3DS, and I did the exact same thing with Robobot. I bought it a couple months before the new Kirby game came out. I started it and I couldn't put it down. I fell in love with it. It is one of the best designed Kirby games ever made. And the reason that is because they give Kirby a mech, which you think, okay, cheesy, stupid, you add a mech to something, like why? But the mech can also copy abilities. And it's also a transformer. When you eat a wheelie, you become a motorcycle and do a driving stage. When you eat Jet, one of the newer abilities, you become a plane and do a side-scrolling shooter stage. And none of them overstay their welcome. They are all perfectly timed and bite-sized. And the story is really compelling. It's one of the most beautiful-looking games on the 3DS. I cannot hype this game enough. It is one of my top 3 Kirby games of all time. And if you are still sleeping on it and have a 3DS before that eShop dies, go buy this game. Just absolutely go buy it and play it.
Do you think this has a potential to get ported to the Switch, or does it? Does it rely on the touchscreen a lot? I don't.
Not really. Just to store items, health items. I would love for it to get a port. I don't think it will.
That's fair. Anyone else? Anything to add for Robobot? That brings us to a game we can probably skip, which is Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn for the Nintendo 3DS, which was re-released on March 8th, 2019. And then that brings us to, well, I guess before we get to Kirby and the Forgotten Land, there were a lot of Kirby games that I didn't add to this timeline. I don't know if anyone has anything to say about any of them. A lot of these are free-to-play, downloadable games. So if there are any that are important to anybody or worth mentioning, this would be the time to do that. I figured none of them were really that special. At least I never thought so, but I could be obviously wrong.
Has anyone played Star Allies? I know that's like a
Wait, did I skip
game.
Star Allies?
Yeah, that's it though.
Oh, Star Allies came out before Extra Epic Yarn. I apologize. Yes, I did. It's on my list and I didn't read it. Have you played Star Allies, Jacob?
No. I think that I've got a couple games on Switch to pick up, and that's one of them.
Okay.
It seemed to me again like for some years, Kirby was just doing like spin. Robobot's different, but I think from Triple Deluxe on, it's a lot of like the main games were very samey. So I'm really glad they did what they did with Forgotten Land, because I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't that excited for the game until we got about 2 weeks out, and I was like, oh, I'm about to buy a Kirby game day one. Let's go.
Morgan, is Star Allies something you've spent time with? I feel like it has, unless I'm just lying.
It's among the games that I have spent a little less time with than my son has.
Okay.
So he's done a lot of Star Allies. He's done a lot of Super Kirby Clash, Kirby Fighters. So any of those like recent ones that are on the Switch that he's been kind of playing around with. And Star Allies is a decent game. I don't think it's my favorite like Kirby game. It's definitely not my least favorite. I would say it's just it's pretty balanced and fun. But
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
fair.
the thing about Star Allies is that it's got multiplayer, but only local, which is dumb. It should have online play, but also they've released free updates over time, adding characters from Kirby's history, including the animal friends, including Gooey, including like DDD and Bandana D and Meta Knight. You can play as all of these different Kirby characters in a side-scrolling Kirby game multiplayer with up to 4 players, which is what makes Star Allies interesting. Unfortunately, without the online play, I think that's what kind of sunk it, because people didn't really nobody was playing local, especially, in the later, the early days of the Switch, which didn't have great, online or local co-op games.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like kind of just this island, I think, that a lot of people didn't play.
Yeah. It's a game that I now do own because I picked it up recently on a sale. I haven't played it yet though, because I knew Forgotten Land was coming, and this was not going to be a game that was going to rival that in any way, in my opinion, just based on the very little I know about Star Allies or what I've watched or seen. But that brings us to the most recent Kirby game, which is Kirby in the Forgotten Land. I know, Morgan, you had reviewed it for ShackNews. I think at the bare minimum, we've all had a chance to play some of this game. I don't think we've all finished it, but we've all had to sink some time. I'm on World 4. I'm slow with Kirby because I'm also trying to 100% it as I go. So I'm going back into levels and completing the missions, which for me, that little extra mission thing that's there that you don't know what the things are, but they're there, and if you beat a level without doing it, it will reveal. I think it only reveals one of them if you miss more than one. For games like this that usually have that type of secrets and collectible things that make you go back to play again, I like this little kind of nudge with the secret missions, because I feel like it gives me more of a reason to immediately go back and look for stuff and play again. But my goodness, is this game not perfect? Well, I mean, could be perfect. I want to finish it first, but there are very few problems I have with this game. I am adoring this game so much. Whoever wants to take it away for this lovely game.
I feel like we're all being polite.
This is no, rip each other's heads off.
I'll go first just so I can shut up and other people can talk that aren't me. I agree with you, Bren. I think that it could be one of the best Kirby games ever made.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely the most gorgeous Kirby game I've ever seen. I'm constantly taking screenshots. It has innovations, and I guess if you don't want to hear any mechanical, I'm not going to spoil any story, though that's not really a thing you can really do in Kirby games anyway. But I'm going to spoil some mechanics a little bit. But the fact that you can upgrade your copy abilities for the first time, the fact that the Waddle Dees are your friends and there's a town, there's a dedicated wave button that when you're in town with the Waddle Dees, if you press up on the D-pad, Kirby waves and they wave back. And it's the cutest goddamn thing I've ever seen. Also, if you use a power by accident on a Waddle Dee, they dramatically fall over like they're dead. And it freaked me out the first time I did it. But then they pop up and they wave. And I'm like, God damn it. That's not nice. Don't do that. But yeah, I just unlocked the fishing, but haven't started it yet. I'm sure I'm going to lose a ton of time to that. But all of the mini games there are a bunch of mini games here. There is a gachapon machine, which I'm already addicted to. Fun fact, if you examine your little reward, your little gachapon, Kirby's sitting at the table, just kind of peeking at it, which is adorable as well. It's one of the cutest goddamn games I've ever played, and easily what I wanted out of a 3D Kirby game.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't finished it yet. I think I'm in the same place Brenden is. I think I'm in World 4 because I too am trying to 100% it as I go, which is foolish, and yet here we are.
Mm-hmm.
But I love it. I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah. Morgan, I feel like you probably have a lot to say about this game, so you should take the mantle here.
So I have finished it. I've played it for review. Yeah, it is the best Kirby game I've ever played. It just immediately pulls you in. The cutscenes are so pretty.
Mm-hmm.
They're some of my favorite cutscenes just on the Switch in general. They're just really beautiful. And it's this epic adventure thing. I think Elflin as a new character is absolutely adorable. Love that. Like the town, you're unlocking mini games, so it motivates you to collect those Waddle Dees. In addition to those missions, it's okay, if you collect this many Waddle Dees, you can unlock this thing in the town, and so it motivates you to do that. You also have to collect them to unlock the boss battle. So the game just has these natural things where and you don't feel forced to do it. It just feels like a natural. Everything works together, is integrated. The same with the Treasure Road stages, because those give you the opportunity to test out the copy abilities in a really fun and engaging way. It's its own little mini game for those copy abilities, and they get harder and harder as you go along as you upgrade your copy abilities. And so that's integrated really well because you need to play those to get the stars to upgrade the copy abilities. So it just everything works so perfectly, and I love all of the little details like the waving and the callbacks. Like, sorry for the noise. Okay.
It's fine.
I have my window open. Like the callbacks to Tilt and Tumble with the Tilt and Roll Kirby minigame, and just like those little like gems hidden in there. And like if you get the fire copy ability and you launch it at Kirby's fireplace, it'll light up. So there's like little secrets in the game too that you just want to play around and mess around with. And the copy abilities are so good. They're so good. They're so well integrated. None of them feel bad. I love playing around with all of them. Yeah, just it's a really, really good game, and my son loves it, so that's automatically like 10 out of 10. He loves the game, so that's good.
Jacob, what about you? How are you feeling about Kirby and the Forgotten Land?
Yeah, so I'm at World 3, the boss of World 3. And I think I don't want to repeat anything anyone said, but I think that there's a few things that I'll remember is the kind of epic camera swings when Kirby is just running alone through this kind of these desolate worlds, and the camera just kind of pans up and just watches him run. The scale of the bosses is something that we've obviously never seen in a Kirby game, and then there's a twist on a lot of the classic Kirby bosses without spoiling the game that I thought was really, really cool and neat. I've been not engaged with the co-op mode. I don't know, Morgan, if you have. My understanding is that it's kind of like the original Kirby games or like the earlier Kirby games, where the second player doesn't have the same abilities that Kirby does, where you almost relegate them to, okay, this is your power, and they get to accompany you on the trip, but you are clearly a player one. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so with co-op, player 2 gets to play as Bandana Waddle Dee. Bandana Waddle Dee just has his spear, and that's it. There's no Malfa mode, there's no copy abilities. In my review, I mentioned that like it would kind of be nice if player 2 could have access to those, just for like me playing with my son. My son does not want to give up the role of Kirby, so I get Bandana Waddle Dee, which is fine. But he also doesn't want to attack enemies as Kirby, so I have to attack them with just the spear. So like there's boss battles where I'm just whacking at the boss and he's just running around in the background. And it's fun. It's really well integrated. But yeah, it's like player 1 is definitely player 1. Like if they go far enough ahead, Banana Waddle Dee will warp over to their location. And so it is like that. But I think it's cool. It's fun. And also with the mini games, co-op is integrated. You can play the cafe mini game together. You can accidentally like squish them against each other too in the mini game, which is kind of funny. And they can fish with you. So yeah, co-op is really good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, probably like my third favorite core Kirby game of all time, and then Air Ride is on its whole other pedestal.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I'm loving it. I don't want to rush through the game because it's such great comfort food for me right now. So it's just like that game where, all right, cool, I'm gonna lay in bed and like play some Kirby, throw my headphones on because the music is phenomenal. And I will say too, to kind of like bring together what everyone's been saying is. Now, Sakurai didn't work on this game, but it feels like all of the things that Kirby has tried to like kind of do throughout the year or play around with, experiment with, this is like the culmination of a lot of those ideas coming together and being realized, to the point where it does feel like it takes a lot of like Sakurai's ideas in kind of just game development philosophies and imparts them into this game. With him with him not being there, which is good to see that there are a lot of other people kind of taking the mantle at Nintendo for a lot of these, legendary franchises. Because it's the same thing with, I personally love Super Mario Odyssey. I think it's a fantastic game, but that's not a game that like Miyamoto is working on. It's a game that other people have taken over, like making Mario games, and to see them sort of have this new generation of developers and people in charge kind of taking these great games and continuing to, do things with them that made them so great, but also adding so much more that makes them even better. And Kirby, I feel like, has gotten that treatment. The Switch has been really good for a lot of Nintendo franchises. It has done a lot for a lot of really great series. I will say that.
I have a bad joke. Would you say it feel good? Anyone? Bueller? They developed Epic Yarn. Just me.
Yeah, feel
Thanks.
good.
I'm gonna go
Yeah.
now. Bye.
Good job.
All right. Damn.
Thank you.
The only other thing I'll add too is while people were like mouthful mode, does Nintendo know what they're doing? Like they do, because when I was talking about Robobot and a few others, like every time the designers of Kirby games introduce a new mechanic, like in Mario games, some of them have felt like, look, I actually genuinely do like Sunshine and want to spend more time with it. I remember being iffy on it, but like Flood is a strange mechanic that didn't always work. But every time Kirby does something like that, like Robobot giving him a mech, here with mouthful mode, it fits seamlessly into the game, the puzzle solving. When I'm Car Kirby and I'm racing to unlock Waddle Dees, it feels so much fun.
Yeah.
Like I love that about the Kirby games specifically. I feel like not a lot of other franchises, when you give, like, I loved the new Luigi's Mansion. I actually think it's the best game in the series, but I do think some of the gimmicks and mechanics were weird and you had to kind of wrap your brain around. Never so far, four worlds in, every time I go mouthful mode with a different weird thing, it always feels fun. It always feels good. It never feels forced. Like, and I think that's really, truly the most amazing thing about this game, that it's just, it innovates this franchise that continues to innovate and makes me excited for whatever the hell comes next, because what other things could they possibly do, you know?
I'm just going to clip you out later and edit it together when you said that you think it feels good when Kirby goes mouthful mode. So I'm just going to let you know. I'm going to clip that
Thank
out.
you. No, please, literally clip it out and tweet it and tag me in it. I will just retweet it. It's fine.
But yeah, I mean, what a high note for the series. I think this is like very, very, very strong game. Like, if not the best Kirby game, I think this is going to be something that people kind of look back on and remember and have fond memories of for a long time. With that being said, does anyone have future hopes for Kirby? What you'd like to see next? A spin-off of some sort, a sequel to something you love, just a sequel to Forgotten Land? Morgan?
Sure. Definitely want to see a sequel to Forgotten Land. I definitely think that that's going to happen, so it's less of like a wish. But I would like to see a truly open world Kirby game. I think that would be kind of interesting, where you have just Kirby and then you just let him go. I think it would be an interesting thing for them to try. And then, yeah, I don't know, bring back Tilt and Tumble on mobile.
Yes.
So I can practice with it.
What about you, Matt?
I mean, I think I said this already, and I think I've got the power of everyone on this call behind me, but we need an air ride too, or just a new air ride. Like I'm like, I'm not even being facetious here. I think like Nintendo's bringing back Super Mario Strikers, a series we thought was long dead. Like I, as a fan of Metroid, thought Dread didn't exist and was dead in the water. And now I have a brand new side-scrolling Metroid game, which means that I may get eventually another one. Hopefully not after 19 years, hopefully sooner. But like this generation of Nintendo and the kind of risk they're taking with the Switch, I feel like there's never been a better time to do air ride. Imagine flying Kirby in handheld mode, steering with the Switch. Like I think it's kind of a no-brainer. I feel like it was lost to time, but I would really love an Air Ride 2 or a new Air Ride or an Air Ride remake. Like, I think there's so many cool things you could do.
At the bare minimum, if Kirby isn't a downloadable character or in the roster for the next Mario Kart game, just riding a Warp Star.
What are we doing?
Yeah, exactly.
What are we doing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What about you, Jacob?
I mean, Kirby Air Ride 2 is my answer, so
I mean, that's
let me
fine.
throw out something different.
Okay.
I would love a Kirby Superstar 2 that maybe brings it back to the old Kirby formula. Like, even if you want to go back to 2D, but I just want it to be jam-packed full of content.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, 10 games. Don't crunch, please. 12 games. But if I had to pick one, it'd be Air Ride 2 as well.
Yeah. I love all of these. I want all of these. And to keep it a different answer, I will say this. And this is going to be a little bit of a cheat, too. Give us either one of two things. A new Kirby pinball or a Nintendo pinball collection, and give me Kirby pinball, Metroid pinball, Pokemon pinball, Mario pinball. That's what we need.
Well done.
The
well
world
done.
needs it. The world needs it.
Smart. Let's do it.
I'll pay for it. I'll buy $60 of that. I don't know.
Just buy Sakurai something.
I will.
Maybe he'll buy him a nap. Can you buy him a nap?
I will
and
buy
then
him a
maybe
nap.
He'll make this for
I will
you.
set up a
Okay, thank
GoFundMe
you.
after this for Sakurai naps.
Set up Kofi, but for naps, please.
Yes.
Nappy, it's happening.
Our game. This is just me being stupid, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. Are games $60 in Canada, or are they more expensive?
They are $80. Sorry, the Switch games are $69.99, which actually, depending on where the conversion is at, is about equal.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more. But
Interesting.
then we have taxes here, which are much higher than most U.S. taxes. So sometimes a video game can cost $100 Canadian, but that's for another podcast entirely.
Wow.
So Kirby: The Forgotten Land is a good game for you to purchase that day one, because it costs you 700 Canadian dollar dues. I don't know.
Yes, exactly, precisely. Horizon cost me $100 even, so $101. So anyway,
interesting. I don't know if I can move to Canada. I'm not Canadian. Everyone thinks I'm Canadian. I don't know why. So we can do one of two things, and there's no pressure here because we are a little bit over the hour. We can end here and everyone can plug, or we can end how we have been ending the podcast, which is a quick game we call What's in the Box. If we don't have the time, that is totally fine. We can end the podcast here.
I'm good for What's in the Box if others are.
I don't want to keep it anyway. I know Jacob has to drive. I'm not sure if Morgan needs a hard out, so I don't want to keep anyone here. So Jacob, it is on you. Do not feel bad if you need to go.
I need to be a big jerk and then say I think we need to end here.
Be the big jerk. That's fine. You have things to do.
Can I just say what's in the box in the way that we say it from the movies? What's in the box?
What we'll have to do is at some point, whether together or separately, have everyone back on, and we will do what's in the box.
Double what's in the box.
We will double it. We will double it. We'll do it for Horizon Forbidden West spoiler cast. I'm not going to play that game. I'm sorry. I won't do it. I'll play it for you. But everyone, please plug all the things. Jacob, since you are new and need to go, plug yourself, your things, whatever you need to plug. Do your thing.
You can find me on all major social media platforms at Jacob McCourt, JACOBMCCOURT. I've been making daily TikToks, which, as a 33-year-old man, is definitely interesting territory that I could do a whole podcast about. Uncharted for sure, and not in the Sony sense. I host two podcasts, the Left Behind Game Club. It's a bi-weekly video game book club podcast that is positive, informative, and sometimes funny. And then I host a seasonal show called Cutscenes. It's about video game movies and TV. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you, Matt.
I'll give the short version, or we'll be here for 3 years. So you can find everything that I do at djstormageddon.com. Has my Ko-fi, my merch store, all of the podcasts that I either host or produce. I will plug my video game podcast, one of my video game podcasts, Fun and Games, which is me and my co-host Jeff Moonen talking about the games industry, certain franchises, things we love, interviewing developers, social media managers, other podcasters. And then I have a sub-series within that series that both Jacob and Brenden have done, and that someday I will definitely get Morgan to do as well, which is called Side Quests. It is a series where the host, which is just one person, talks about game they love and why they love it for like 5 to 15 minutes. Jacob has done episodes on Kirby Superstar and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Brenden has done episodes on The Messenger and Super Mario Brothers 3. And it's a fun time. It's my way of putting positivity about gaming back into the gaming space. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but like Twitter can be a little negative sometimes. Gamers can be a little rough. Yeah, I know. What? So this was my kind of way of like supporting the gamers that I adore. And you don't have to be a podcaster if you're listening to this and you just have a microphone, but you've never podcasted before. Reach out to me. I'm DJ_Stormageddon on most social media platforms. So yeah, come find me.
And real quick, what podcast feed is the episode for Kirby that Jacob was on going to be?
Oh, yes. And that's right. I forgot. I think I mentioned before. I don't know. Time's a lake. Jacob is the guest on Fun and Games podcast episode where we did a Kirby retrospective, and that will be out the Friday of PAX East on the 22nd. We've already recorded it, but we have a bit of a backlog. And you can just, if you look up Fun and Games podcast or Fun and Games with Matt and Jeff, you will find it on every podcast platform.
Love it. And Morgan, plug all of the things.
I don't have many things. So you can find my writing at ShackNews, cover a whole bunch of things. I have a Kirby review up there. I have a Kirby feature where I talk about playing with my son. So all kinds of things. And, follow all the Tetris social media channels. Hopefully some new memes coming soon. Just gotta, whip them up. And you can also follow me on Twitter if you want to just see weird stuff all the time. It's at @author_mshaver. So, yeah.
Love it. And again, thank all three of you so much for coming on. This was a pleasure. This was a blast. I'm sorry it went a little bit over an hour. I owe you a nappy now too, Jacob. I'm gonna send you a nappy. I'm gonna make that. You and Sacker will be my first nappies. You can find everything we do at passcontroller.io. You can find me at Big Room. And until next time.